අලුතෙන් SLT Mobitel Home 4G LTE connection ගන්නාට වටිනා tab computer සහ data දීමනා. අලුතෙන් SLT Mobitel Home 4G LTE connection ගන්නාට වටිනා tab computer සහ data දීමනා.
Best ever sunlight. දැන් රුපියල් 200ක best ever මිලකට.
In your headlines tonight, give and take. Talks between the president and the TNA end in a surprise compromise.
We can further continue these discussions to solve these issues.
We want Sri Lanka to be the Switzerland of the East.
A special development fund will be set up to attract diaspora investments.
Change the driver. International economic expert challenges central bank inflation figures, urges currency board, joins us live in discussion tonight. Talk of the town. CEB rejects rumours of 10-hour power cuts next week, while the CPC says it will supply enough for generation. The right to live. The Bar Association seeks Supreme Court intervention for immediate action on shortages. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9. This Friday, the 25th of March 2022.
මුළු රටටම සැඟවුණු අවුරුදු උකුරහස.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. Joining you tonight on First at 9, I'm Indhivari Amuatta. The central bank's current inflation figures have been challenged by a global applied economics expert whose own data shows Sri Lanka's inflation to be at a staggering 49% as of the 22nd of this month. Further, also taking into account a depreciation figure of 26%, calls have been issued for the country to install a currency board to better manage and the pegging of the economy to the US dollar.
Right now, there's hardly anyone over the age of 18 in Sri Lanka who doesn't understand what the term inflation is. It's the new buzzword these days. The rising prices of the most basic essentials such as food, fuel and energy have given every Sri Lankan a literal crash course in how things work in an economy. According to the central bank, however, this is what a 17.5% inflation level is supposed to feel like. To add to that, the rupee hasn't been doing too well over the past 2 weeks since the central bank decided to allow greater exchange rate flexibility. Having expected the dollar to trade at 230 rupees initially, right now it's nowhere near that level. However, according to economics expert Professor Steve Hanke from the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, Sri Lanka's inflation is more than double what the central bank's figure says. In a social media post yesterday, Professor Hanke said Sri Lanka's inflation recorded on the 22nd of March has actually been measured at a massive 49%. Professor Hanke also posted data that shows the Sri Lankan rupee depreciation against the US dollar at 26%, also as at 22nd March. The central bank's official rate that day was 275 rupees. Today, the central bank set their official US dollar rates with the buying rate at 284 rupees and 82 cents and the selling rate at 294 rupees and 99 cents. This is a far cry from the central bank's early estimates, but closer to what the market was predicting it would end up at. Professor Hanke's advice to Sri Lanka is dump the rupee, peg it to the dollar and go back to having a currency board, such as how Sri Lanka did things from 1884 up to 1950. This now begs the question, how is the currency board different from a central bank? While a central bank like we have now overlooks monetary policy, exchange rate policy, reserve management and overall financial system oversight, a currency board has limited functions. A currency board would take away management of the country's exchange rate and money supply and take its own decisions on what the rupee's actual value would be. How does it do this? By backing all units of domestic currency with a foreign currency, calculated at an agreed upon or pegged rate. Unlike the central bank's ability to print money, the currency board will have to back whatever it prints with foreign currency. This is called a 100% reserve requirement and entails a certain amount in foreign reserves to be maintained at all times, of which the currency board earns interest as well. This allows an unlimited exchange of the domestic currency for foreign currency. Professor Hanke's suggestion, given Sri Lanka's current inflation levels, has many benefits, chief among them being a stable exchange rate and, due to the money printing restrictions, a stable inflation rate. Disadvantages, however, also exist in the system, mainly in the uncertainty that comes with allowing the economic conditions of a foreign country to determine interest rates in Sri Lanka. This also translates to Sri Lanka's monetary policy being one that isn't its own either. In any case, the concept is a fascinating one and would without a doubt gain some traction within the island. However, whether Sri Lanka can successfully emulate Hong Kong and embrace such a drastic change in its system is another big question mark altogether. With the International Monetary Fund talks coming up next month, we have to wait and see what other solutions will be tabled then as well.
Now, with calls for major changes to how Sri Lanka's economy is being managed being relayed due to the country's current economic woes, it is no doubt that a major rethink is on the card. With Professor of Applied Economics at the Johns Hopkins University, Steve Hanke, calling for a currency board to take over the management of the country's exchange rate and money supply, questions still remain on the concept and what it entails. To explain this to us, we have with us the professor himself, who has been described as a currency doctor due to his expansive experience working with troubled currencies across the world and helping them recover. A warm welcome to you, Dr. Hanke. Thank you for joining us and a very good morning to you.
Well, it's a good day to you. It's a pleasure to be with you. As you know, you mentioned currency boards, and Ceylon in the old days had a currency board from 1884 until 1950. It worked perfectly with no problems. It's just what you need now. I measure the inflation rate very accurately in Sri Lanka every day, and today the inflation rate is 55% per year. That, of course, is way higher than the official rate, but it is the accurate rate. The accurate inflation rate in Sri Lanka today is 55%. You obviously know that the rupee is depreciated by almost 30% since the first of the year. So you have a currency crisis on your hands of the highest magnitude.
Right.
The only way to solve this problem and get rid of the crisis is to install a currency board system in which the rupee would be fixed to an anchor currency at a fixed exchange rate, let's say the US dollar. It would trade freely at that fixed exchange rate, and the rupee would be fully backed by US dollar reserves. That would be the elements of a currency board, and then the rupee would be a clone of the US dollar. It would be just as good as the US dollar.
Yes,
The
Dr. Hanke,
if inflation would stop immediately, and the problem you're facing would be resolved.
Right. Dr. Hanke, if I may interrupt you, you're explaining to us about how we should go about it, but what exactly is a currency board and what factors of the economy led you to suggest this to the Sri Lankan economy? If you can give us an understanding of how that works.
Well, the reason you have so much inflation and a depreciating currency is that the central bank has been printing too many rupees, and there's been no discipline. There's been no what we call a hard budget constraint in the system. With a currency board, by the way, if the rupee was fixed at a fixed exchange rate to the US dollar, traded freely with the US dollar at that fixed rate, and the rupee was fully backed with US dollar reserves and was a clone, therefore, of the US dollar, you would have what's called a hard budget constraint. Because in that case, the central bank, which would become a currency board, could not extend credit to the government. And that's the problem. The central bank is extending credit. There's no hard budget constraint on the fiscal affairs in Sri Lanka. You have to put the government in a straight and politicians in a straitjacket so that they can't destroy the economy, can't create inflation, and can't destroy the currency. That's the problem.
But why would
you need a hard budget constraint, and as long as you have a central bank that can extend credit to the fiscal authorities, you don't have a hard budget constraint. You have no discipline, no authority.
Why do you say a currency board will fit better in Sri Lanka's case than the central bank? Is it that the central bank has gone about things the wrong way, as you explain, or can't the central bank at this juncture manage the currency?
Well, no, they can't unless you change the law governing the central bank and make it a currency board law. That's exactly what I've done in many places. For example, in Bulgaria, in 1997, I was President Stoyanov's chief advisor. The hyperinflation they had, was peaking out at 242% per month, 242% per month. And we put a currency board in, we changed the central bank law so that it became a currency board. The Bulgarian National Bank, since July of 1997, has been operating as a currency board, been operating beautifully, low inflation, the second lowest debt to GDP ratio of any country in the European Union is Bulgaria because of the currency board. We smashed inflation within 30 days.
So you're saying it is a success. It is a success, and there are success stories. Is that what you're saying?
There are only success stories. There have been over 70 currency boards. None of them have ever failed. So it must work, and it does work. It even included, by the way, a famous currency board that John Maynard Keynes, the famous British economist, set up in 1918 in North Russia during the Civil War in North Russia. And that worked perfectly even during the Civil War. So there are no cases of failure. These are designed as fail-safe, no failure. And they do have the ability to put a hard budget constraint in the system that makes it impossible for the monetary authorities and the fiscal authorities to create inflation and destroy currencies.
Professor Hanke, you do say that the balance of payments crisis in Sri Lanka and the fuel price shortages, the price hikes and the shortages within the country are sinking the Sri Lankan economy. But as we speak, the political authority as well as economists, academics are coming together in discussion to figure out solutions. In your view, can Sri Lanka peg its economy to a country such as the United States and survive considering the global uncertainties these days?
Of course. The argument that it can't tie itself to a stable currency is just stupid. The people saying that don't know what they're talking about. There has never been one of these systems that's actually failed. So the proof of the pudding is in the eating. They don't fail. Mm-hmm. There are no cases where they failed. So the people making arguments about what they need to do and that they somehow shouldn't have a currency board, they're talking about a theoretical exercise in a classroom someplace. Right. They're not in the real world. These people have no idea what they're talking about, and they're talking about exactly embracing the kind of disastrous system that you have right now, where you have, again, to repeat, I measured it today, and none of these people know how to measure inflation. The inflation is 55% per year in Sri Lanka today. That's what it is.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Hanke, for your time with us live on AdaDerana 24, joining us from there. We look forward to talking to you at length, but for now, thank you for your time. And we take a short break here on AdaDerana 24 for the moment.
Big 3.
The long-awaited talks between President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Tamil National Alliance took place this morning. With both sides hoping for varying positive outcomes of the talks, the Tamil National Alliance held high hopes of finally reaching some solution to the Tamil question, as well as other short-term issues faced by the northern populace. At the end of the meeting, the TNA revealed that the government has agreed to a host of compromises, including the release of a long-term PTA detainees and the setting up of a Northern and Eastern Province Development Fund that will attract diaspora investments.
The highly anticipated talks between President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the Tamil National Alliance took place this morning at the Presidential Secretariat. The talks have been welcomed by the United States government, commending the setting up of truth-seeking mechanisms as part of the country's rights accountability, while adding that it will offer its fullest support. This is the first time the TNA and the President have met since his election in November 2019. At the outset, the meeting gave off an air of openness and willingness. In his opening remarks, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said that he remains committed to solving all issues faced by the Tamil people and welcomed more dialogue after these initial rounds.
When I was elected, also I said that though my majority of the votes come from the south, I am the president for the whole country. I will serve equally all the citizens of this country. I want to solve the issues that we have. I just want to invite you all to work with the government. Politically, you can take any stand, but for the people of the area, we will work together. I'm ready for that. The government is ready for that. We can discuss today and we can further continue these discussions to solve these issues.
We are committed to using this opportunity to resolve the Tamil national question, which has plagued this country from 1947 when it attained independence. So we are prepared to serve within the framework of united, undivided Sri Lanka. We want Sri Lanka to prosper. We want Sri Lanka to be the Switzerland of the East.
Speaking to the media after the meeting, TNA MP M.A. Sumandiran revealed a host of interim agreements that the government and the TNA had reached ahead of further talks. They consist of serious compromises arrived at from the government side.
The first of those is that there will be early release of the long-term prisoners held under the PTA as part of the reform process of the PTA itself. The Honorable Minister of Justice will discuss with me and recommend to the President, those who have been incarcerated for a long time, the process of how that release can take place. Secondly, it was agreed with regard to land matters in the north and east that no steps will be taken that will result in demographic change, and divisional secretary boundaries, district secretary boundaries, maritime boundaries that have been proposed, changes to those boundaries that have been proposed will be put on hold. And the President assured us that no further land will be acquired for the military's purposes. And it was also agreed that the implementation of special laws such as Mahavali, forest, archaeology, wildlife, etc., that has caused problems will be discussed, and that no measures will be implemented until we discuss those matters. Also, lands on which our people have cultivated for a long time and as certified to be so by the divisional secretaries will be allowed to continue to be cultivated, and fishermen access to sea will also not be prevented, and that they will continue to enjoy those livelihood activities in those areas. With regard, third matter, with regard to the enforced disappearances, it was explained to us by the government that the 100,000 sum that was offered was not compensation for the loss of the person, but that it was an interim payment as an interim relief measure. And it was agreed today that proper investigations will commence immediately with regard to the disappearances. And the fourth and the last matter that was agreed to be implemented is that a special development fund for the war devastated north and east will be set up immediately, and all measures will be taken to attract diaspora investments to that special fund.
The Ceylon Electricity Board rejected speculation of 10-hour power cuts next week, stating that such comments have been used to create unnecessary panic. CEB Chairman MMC Ferdinando says the long power cuts are unnecessary if the required fuel stocks are received on time to operate their power plants. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation has assured the necessary fuel stocks will be supplied to the CEB.
Since the beginning of this year, the Ceylon Electricity Board has faced problems with providing uninterrupted supply to the general public. This has been due to a few reasons, one being low hydropower generation due to low water levels in reservoirs. Speaking at a media briefing today, Chairman of the Ceylon Electricity Board MMC Ferdinando explained that this situation has gotten a bit worse, with water levels now down below 30%. He added that power supply to the southern province may come under threat due to the Samanala reservoir able to only generate enough electricity for 3 days. To avoid this situation, the CEB is expected to sign an agreement with 3 private sector power plants located in Amelipitia, Matra and Sapukaskanda to purchase a total of 170 megawatts on an emergency basis in the near future. Further, the rise in demand for fuel-generated power has also come under threat, with the CEB unable to secure sufficient stocks of fuel, mainly diesel, to run its power plants due to the ongoing forex crisis. At the moment, power generation at the Keravalapitia plant has been completely halted due to the lack of diesel stocks and resulting in a loss of 270 megawatts to the grid. Further, the Utturu Janani power plant in Puttalam that generates 176 megawatts of electricity using diesel is also off the national grid as well. Due to these factors, there have been speculations that daily scheduled power cuts may have to be tweaked up to 10 hours from next week. However, the Ceylon Electricity Board says that this isn't the case.
පැය 10කට යන්න ඒකද මේ විවිධ අරමුණු සඳහා මහජනයාව නිකන් කුපිත කිරීමට සහ මහජනතා උද්ඝෝෂණයක් ඇති කිරීම සඳහා කරන ප්‍රචාරක කටයුතු එහෙම නැහැ සත්‍ය යථාර්ථය වෙන්නේ.
The CB chairman added that there might not be a need to implement power cuts for even the current 7 hours if sufficient fuel stocks are received from the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation on time. To discuss these matters, a meeting between officials of the CPC, the CEB and the Prime Minister's office was held at the Presidential Secretariat today under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Addressing the media following the meeting, CPC Chairman Subit Vijayasinghe revealed some of the decisions taken to ensure uninterrupted supply of diesel to the CEB.
විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලයට අවශ්‍ය ඉන්ධන තොග සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මෙට්‍රික් ටොන් 2000ක් අවශ්‍යයි ඩීසල්, දැවිතෙල් මෙට්‍රික් ටොන් 2400ක් අවශ්‍යයි. මේ තොග ප්‍රමාණයන් සියල්ල සැලකිල්ලට අරගෙන අද අලුතෙන් තීන්දුව කරා තවත් අපි ඉන්දියානු ණය ක්‍රමයේ යටතේ තවත් එක්නවක් වැඩිපුර ලබා ගන්න. ඒ නිසා ඩීසල් පිළිබඳ කිසිදු හිඟයක් ඇත්තේ නැහැ. ඒ අනුව අපිට විදුලි බල නිෂ්පාදනයට අවශ්‍ය ඉන්ධන සම්පූර්ණ අපි ලබා දීමට කටයුතු කරනවා.
In the meantime, a payment of $42 million was made for the oil tanker that has been anchored in Sri Lankan waters for the past 12 days that carries 20,000 metric tons of diesel and another 20,000 metric tons of jet fuel. Elaborating further, the CPC chairman also offered an update on diesel shipments expected to arrive in Sri Lanka.
ඊළඟ නැව තොගය අපි සෞන්දර්ය නැවත ලබා ගන්නවා. ඒක 37500ක් තොගයක්. ඊට අමතරව අපි තවත් අප්‍රේල් මාසේ 1-2 දිනයන් දෙකේ තවත් 37500ක් අපිට ලැබෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ සාමාන්‍ය අවශ්‍යතාවයට වඩා වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් අපිට ආරක්ෂිත තොගයක් හැටියට පවත්වාගෙන යාමේ හැකියාවක් සහිතව ඉන්ධන ආනයනය කළා.
The Bar Association of Sri Lanka filed 2 fundamental rights petitions in the Supreme Court today on the country's economic crisis, seeking a ruling that orders the respondents to the petitions to immediately hold stakeholders' consultations to formulate and implement policies to provide uninterrupted essentials to the general public.
The Bar Association of Sri Lanka filed 2 fundamental rights petitions in the Supreme Court today on the country's economic crisis. The Attorney General, the Cabinet, the Central Bank Governor, Treasury Secretary, Ministry Secretaries, the Ceylon Electricity Board, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the State Pharmaceutical Corporation were included as respondents. The applications were filed by BASL President Salia Piris PC, Deputy President Anramad Degoda PC, Secretary Rajiv Amarasuriya, Treasurer Rajin Pereira and Assistant Secretary Pasindu Silva. The petition seeks Supreme Court orders that would direct the respondents to the petitions to immediately hold stakeholder consultations with independent experts to formulate and implement policies to provide uninterrupted access and to provide concessions in relation to the prices of essential goods and services to the people, including for LP gas, fuel, electricity, milk powder, medicines and food. The petitioners say that they were compelled to file the petitions due to the severe shortages in essential goods and services that are considered vital for the survival and existence of the citizens of the Republic, in whom is guaranteed the fundamental right to equality, equal protection of the law, and the right to life under the Constitution.
And that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9, your AdaDerana English News Bulletin. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.